Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
At the age of 11 years, Leo had already experienced the harsher aspects of life. Having grown up in a modest orphanage located on the edge of town, he had never known the comforting warmth of a family or the tender embrace of a parent. The orphanage, while impeccably well kept, could only provide him with the fundamental necessities: shelter, food, and an education. The one thing Leo yearned for above all else was the profound feeling of belonging, of truly being someone's family. Yet, despite this inherent loneliness, Leo carried within him an extraordinary inner light, a resilient joy that nothing seemed capable of dimming. His kind spirit, and the simple, unwavering belief that inherent goodness existed in the world, endeared him to absolutely everyone he encountered. From a very young age, Leo had clearly understood that his personal circumstances were fundamentally different. He didn't possess stories of vibrant family vacations or lively weekend gatherings to share. Unlike some of the other children attending his school, there was no mum to gently scold him or a dad to patiently teach him how to ride a bicycle. However, Leo was not one to dwell on what he lacked. Instead, he completely poured his energy into the things that genuinely made him happy. This included drawing intricate pictures of fantastical places he dreamed of visiting one day, avidly reading books that allowed him to escape to far-off imaginative lands, and diligently helping the caretakers at the orphanage with various small chores. For Leo, these small, consistent acts of kindness and imaginative engagement filled his heart, even if only for a while. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Leo sat at his usual, familiar spot by the orphanage's window, meticulously sketching a picture of a cozy house completely surrounded by trees, he suddenly noticed something quite unusual. A smartly dressed man was steadily walking up the path towards the orphanage's front doors. He wore a formal, precisely tailored black coat, impeccably polished shoes, and carried a sleek briefcase that gleamed brightly in the sunlight. Leo had never before seen anyone quite like him at the orphanage. Intensely curious, he continued watching as the man spoke briefly with the head caretaker, Mrs. Jenkins, who then, quite conspicuously, glanced over in Leo's direction. A few moments later, she called for him. "Leo dear, there's someone here who wants to speak with you," Mrs. Jenkins said softly, her face clearly showing a hint of surprise and an underlying uncertainty. Nervously, Leo walked towards the visitor, his small, well-worn shoes echoing distinctly on the orphanage's tiled floor. As he approached, the man gave him a warm smile, one that seemed both genuinely kind and carefully measured. "Hello, Leo," the man greeted, his voice deep but notably gentle. "My name is Mr. Perkins. I'm here on behalf of someone who wishes to meet you." Leo's eyes widened visibly with profound curiosity. "Meet me?" he asked, his voice filled with innocent wonder. "Who would want to meet me?" Mr. Perkins chuckled softly, clearly understanding the child's momentary confusion. "It seems that your grandfather has been looking for you, Leo," he said, watching the boy's reaction very closely, "and he would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow evening." A whirlwind of disparate thoughts and urgent questions immediately flooded Leo's young mind. A grandfather? He had never known he had any family at all, let alone someone who actively wanted to meet him. The orphanage staff had only ever told him that his parents were no longer with him and that no other family members had come forward in all these long years. And now, completely out of the blue, a grandfather wanted to have dinner with him. Leo's heart raced with a powerful mixture of intense excitement and profound nervousness. Part of him felt absolutely thrilled. This incredible news could potentially mean he wasn't truly alone in the world, that he actually had someone out there who genuinely cared for him. But another, more cautious part of him couldn't help but feel wary. Why now? Why had this mysterious grandfather never come for him before? And what kind of person was he? Seeing the clear apprehension on Leo's face, Mr. Perkins gently continued, "I understand this might be a lot to take in, but I assure you, your grandfather is very eager to meet you. He's arranged a special dinner at a nice restaurant in town. If you would like, Mrs. Jenkins can come with you, just to make sure you're comfortable." Leo glanced at Mrs. Jenkins, who offered him a gentle, reassuring nod of encouragement. She had been like a mother to him in many significant ways, always guiding and supporting him with immense love and deep kindness. Her reassuring smile told him that this was indeed a moment he should embrace, a unique opportunity to connect with someone he had never known but who might prove to mean something profoundly important. Finally, Leo looked back at Mr. Perkins and, with a shy but hopeful smile, nodded. "I'd like to meet him," he said softly. The next day seemed to interminably drag by, each hour feeling significantly longer than the last, as Leo eagerly anticipated the evening. He wore his very best clothes, an outfit Mrs. Jenkins had carefully saved for truly special occasions. It was simple, but Leo felt proud and a little bit special wearing it. As he waited for Mr. Perkins to arrive and transport him to the restaurant, he couldn't help but wonder what his grandfather might actually be like. Would he be genuinely warm and friendly? Would he possess fascinating stories to tell? Or would he be like some of the stern, unsmiling adults he had seen before, who always seemed perpetually too busy? Finally, the designated time arrived, and Mr. Perkins courteously escorted Leo to a sleek black car waiting just outside the orphanage. Leo marveled at the car, its smooth, highly polished exterior reflecting the vibrant orange and pink hues of the setting sun. The ride to the restaurant was quiet, and Leo's mind buzzed with intense anticipation and a distinct tinge of nervousness. He glanced out the window, watching as they passed towering buildings and city lights flickering on as dusk gracefully settled over the town. When they finally reached the restaurant, Leo's breath caught sharply in his throat. It was grander than anything he had ever seen. Tall glass doors, shimmering lights, and elegantly dressed people milled about the impressive entrance. The inside was even more magnificent, with dazzling chandeliers casting a warm, inviting glow over tables meticulously covered in pristine white cloths. Servers moved with remarkable grace between the tables, carrying trays of dishes that smelled unlike anything Leo had ever encountered. Guided by Mr. Perkins, Leo walked to a table near the very center of the expansive room, where a distinguished man sat waiting. He was elderly, possessing a strong, upright posture and eyes that held a distinct glimmer of intensity. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore a tailored suit that seemed to fit him like a literal second skin. Leo immediately felt a surge of awe and apprehension. This was his grandfather, the man who, up until this very moment, had been a complete mystery. That as Leo approached, the man looked up, his eyes meeting Leo's with a complex mixture of curiosity and something else that Leo couldn't quite identify. Was it regret? Sadness? Leo couldn't tell, but the look lingered distinctly in his mind as he sat down, feeling small and profoundly unsure under his grandfather's steady gaze. "Hello, Leo," the man greeted, his voice deep and carefully measured. "I'm Roger, your grandfather." Leo swallowed hard, managing a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Hello, sir," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. For a brief moment, they sat in silence, each unsure of exactly how to bridge the palpable gap between them. Leo felt a distinct pang of disappointment. He had vividly imagined that meeting his grandfather would be filled with immense warmth and bubbling excitement, but instead it felt distant, almost cold. He tried to think of something pertinent to say, but no words came to mind. Just then, the server approached to take their order, effectively breaking the tense silence. Leo glanced at the menu, feeling utterly overwhelmed by the unfamiliar dishes and their elegant, unpronounceable names. Sensing his hesitation, his grandfather decisively ordered for both of them, choosing dishes that sounded elaborate and undoubtedly expensive. As the server walked away, Roger looked back at Leo, attempting a small, polite smile. "I thought it was time we met," he said, his tone neutral, as though he were merely discussing routine business rather than actual family. Leo nodded again, still too uncertain to speak. He could vividly feel the vast distance between them, and a small, nagging part of him wondered if he was somehow disappointing his grandfather. But he clung stubbornly to the hope that by the conclusion of the evening, this imposing stranger who was his grandfather might just transform into the family he had always profoundly dreamed of. In that very moment, Leo had absolutely no idea that this single dinner would inevitably lead to unexpected encounters and profound acts of kindness that would irrevocably change his entire life forever. As Leo sat directly across from his grandfather, he couldn't help but feel as though he had suddenly entered another world entirely. The restaurant was unlike any place he had ever seen before, a realm of exquisite elegance and sophisticated grandeur that seemed far removed from his humble life at the orphanage. The polished marble floors, the glittering chandeliers, and the soft murmur of refined voices made him feel both remarkably small and profoundly out of place. The neatly folded napkins, the ornate silverware, and the delicate porcelain plates were all things he had only ever seen in glossy picture books, never in tangible real life. Leo glanced across the table at his grandfather, Mr. Roger Hastings, who was undeniably a man of immense wealth and significant influence, well known throughout the city as a prominent businessman. Mr. Hastings was widely respected and admired, yet he seemed distant, almost guarded. His attire was impeccable, every single detail of his appearance meticulously curated, from his crisp white shirt to his finely tailored suit. But despite this outward polish, His expression was cold, and he regarded Leo with a formality that made the boy feel as though he were an unwelcome intruder rather than an actual family member. After the server poured them water and discreetly left the table, Leo shifted nervously in his seat, wondering precisely how to break the heavy silence. He desperately wanted to know more about his grandfather, about why he had never come to see him before, and what had suddenly changed now. But his urgent questions felt like fragile things, utterly unfit for the grand, imposing setting they were currently in. He didn't want to appear disrespectful, so he decided to start small. "So, do you come here often?" Leo asked, his voice tentative and unsure. Mr. Hastings looked up from his menu, his expression one of mild surprise, as though he hadn't actually expected Leo to speak. "Yes, I dine here occasionally," he replied, his tone polite but distinctly distant. "It's a respectable establishment." Leo nodded keenly, feeling the weight of his grandfather's unwavering gaze on him. He wished his grandfather would open up a bit more, perhaps share stories or cherished memories. Something to make this moment feel more like a genuine family dinner and less like a sterile business transaction. But Mr. Hastings seemed entirely focused on the lavish casting quick glances around the restaurant as if he were more interested in who might see him than in the young boy sitting directly across from him. The silence stretched on, becoming increasingly uncomfortable and heavy. Leo tried again, his young heart hopeful, yearning for some form of genuine connection. "Do you like reading books?" he asked, hoping to discover some common ground. Mr. Hastings raised an eyebrow, his expression almost puzzled. "Reading," he repeated, as though the entire concept was utterly foreign. "I suppose I read what I need to for work." "Oh," Leo replied, feeling his courage visibly waver. "I like reading. It makes me feel like I'm in a different world sometimes." Mr. Hastings offered a small, polite smile but didn't respond further. Leo sensed that his grandfather was simply not accustomed to talking to children, let alone someone like him. The boy felt a sharp pang of sadness, suddenly realizing that maybe this man wasn't the warm, loving family he had dreamed of all these years. Perhaps, to Mr. Hastings, he was merely an obligation. Just as the silence was becoming truly unbearable, the server returned to take their order. Mr. Hastings ordered for both of them, without even asking Leo what he would personally like, selecting dishes that sounded incredibly fancy and foreign to the young boy. As the server left, Leo tried to break the ice yet again, determined to make this dinner feel meaningful. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Hastings," Leo said quietly, offering a small, shy smile. His grandfather's face softened ever so slightly, and he gave a quick nod. "You're welcome," he replied. It seemed appropriate given the circumstances, though his words felt more formal than heartfelt. Leo's small spark of hope didn't dwindle. "Circumstances," he repeated, feeling genuinely confused. Mr. Hastings hesitated, then continued. "It seemed time to meet. After all, family should know each other, even if things are not always simple." The way he spoke, as if they were discussing a mere business matter rather than a profound family reunion, made Leo's heart ache. He wanted desperately to ask why his grandfather had never come to see him before, why he had waited so incredibly long to reach out, but he was afraid of seeming ungrateful. So he kept his pressing questions to himself, choosing instead to take a sip of water to ease his growing nerves. The dishes soon arrived, each plate meticulously arranged with food that looked more like intricate artwork than something to actually eat. Leo stared at his plate, unsure of where to even begin, as the food seemed both beautifully artistic and utterly intimidating. His grandfather, however, began eating with precise, practiced movements, his attention focused entirely on his meal. Sensing the lingering awkwardness, Leo tried one last time to initiate conversation. "Do you have any stories about my mum or dad?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but the profound longing in his tone was unmistakable. Mr. Hastings paused, his fork hovering briefly over his plate. For a fleeting moment, a shadow crossed his face, and he looked down, as if the question had touched on something deeply painful. But just as quickly, his mask of composure returned, and he shook his head. "It was a long time ago, Leo," he replied. "Some things are better left in the past." Leo's heart sank, feeling the invisible walls that separated him from his grandfather grow even higher. He had so many questions, so much he wanted to know about the family he had never known. But Mr. Hastings seemed utterly unwilling to share any of it. Despite sitting together in this beautiful restaurant, Leo felt miles away from the imposing man across the table. The fine food and elegant surroundings did absolutely nothing to fill the profound emptiness he felt inside. As Leo tentatively poked at his meal, he noticed a couple at the table next to them glancing over. They were an older couple, their eyes warm and friendly, and they offered him a small, comforting smile. Leo smiled back, feeling a flicker of genuine comfort from the stranger's kindness. It was a small gesture, but it made him feel significantly less alone in the grand, unfamiliar setting. The woman leaned over slightly, addressing Leo with a gentle tone. "You have a lovely smile, young man. Are you enjoying dinner with your grandfather?" Leo looked down, a bit embarrassed, but he nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am, thank you." The couple exchanged a knowing glance, sensing the underlying tension at the table. The woman smiled warmly at Leo again and said, "Well, you look very handsome tonight. I hope you're having a wonderful time." Her kind words brought a small, genuine smile to Leo's face. For a moment, he felt as though someone truly saw him, understood him in a way that his grandfather had not. Mr. Hastings, noticing the interaction, cleared his throat, casting a slightly irritated glance at the couple before immediately refocusing on his meal. But the woman's kindness had sparked something important in Leo, and he felt a bit bolder. Gathering his courage, he looked across the table and said, "Mr. Hastings, I mean Grandpa, what's it like to be you? To have a big house and all this, everything?" Mr. Hastings looked at Leo, genuinely taken aback by the innocent, direct question. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden shift in conversation. "Well, it's busy," he replied stiffly. "There are always responsibilities." Leo nodded, absorbing his grandfather's answer. But as he looked around at the elegant surroundings, the quiet whispers, and the perfectly polished decor, he couldn't help but wonder if having all this truly made his grandfather happy. In Leo's young mind, family meant warmth, laughter, and love, things he emphatically didn't feel at this table. As the dinner continued, Leo felt the heavy weight of disappointment settle over him. His grandfather was physically present, yes, but it felt like they were worlds apart. Yet, amidst his growing disillusionment, the simple kindness of the strangers at the next table gently reminded him that family could sometimes be found in unexpected places, even if it wasn't always where one might hope. In that profound moment, Leo realized that tonight might not be the warm family reunion he had so desperately dreamed of. But as he exchanged a friendly smile with the strangers, he sensed that perhaps he was not entirely alone after all. As the evening continued, Leo grew increasingly aware of the awkward silence that lay heavy and oppressive between him and his grandfather. Though they were seated physically close together, a vast gulf of unfamiliarity and deep reserve unmistakably separated them. Leo's initial excitement about finally meeting his grandfather had gradually faded, replaced by the sinking, disheartening realization that Mr. Hastings seemed far more preoccupied with the rigid formalities of their dinner than with genuinely getting to know his only grandson. The couple at the next table, however, couldn't help but notice the young boy's quiet discomfort. The woman, a gentle lady with inherently kind eyes, exchanged a knowing glance with her husband. She had been observing Leo, her heart softening considerably at the sight of the boy's nervous smile and his wide, curious eyes. She saw how earnestly Leo tried to engage with his grandfather, only to receive short, detached responses that seemed to leave him feeling even more alone with each attempt. She could keenly sense the boy's profound longing for connection and warmth, and her innate motherly instincts immediately took over. Turning slightly in her chair, the woman caught Leo's gaze and offered him a truly warm smile. "Hello there, young man," she said gently, her voice filled with a kindness that felt like a soothing balm. "That's quite a sharp outfit you've got on tonight. You look very handsome." Leo's face immediately lit up, a genuine, unforced smile breaking through the cautious demeanor he had been wearing all evening. "Thank you, ma'am," he replied shyly, glancing down at his shirt. He felt a rush of warmth at her compliment, a simple kindness that made him feel significantly less out of place in the grand, unfamiliar restaurant. The woman leaned a bit closer, nodding subtly toward his plate. "How's the food? I always find it a bit fancy here, don't you?" Leo giggled softly. "It's different," he said, not wanting to sound ungrateful but admitting with a hint of palpable relief that he wasn't quite accustomed to the extravagant meal. Her husband chuckled and nodded in agreement. "You know, I think the same every time we come here," he said. "Some of this stuff looks too nice to eat." Leo laughed, his shoulders visibly relaxing as he felt the comforting warmth of their friendly conversation. For the very first time that evening, he felt like he could genuinely be himself, not a stranger or a mere guest, but just Leo, a boy who enjoyed simple things and good company. Mr. Hastings looked over, clearly noticing the interaction. He maintained a polite but distinctly reserved expression, slightly irked by the interruption. Yet something deep within him shifted as he observed how the couple's kindness brought a genuine smile to his grandson's face. Leo seemed more at ease with these complete strangers than he had been all evening with his own grandfather, and for the first time, Mr. Hastings felt a sharp pang of guilt mixed with a profound curiosity. Why did it take others to bring out Leo's inherent warmth? Why hadn't he been able to reach his grandson in the same fundamental way? As the conversation continued, a server approached their table to refill their water glasses. He too had noticed the quiet boy at the fancy table and couldn't help but feel a sense of empathy. While filling Mr. Hastings' glass, he nodded toward Leo with a soft smile. "Good evening, young man. I don't see guests your age around here often. You're quite the gentleman tonight." Leo beamed, grateful for the server's unexpected friendliness. "Thank you, sir," he replied, his face glowing with sincere appreciation. The server, sensing a subtle opportunity to bring some much-needed warmth to the moment, turned to Mr. Hastings with a thoughtful look. "You have a fine young man here, sir," he remarked. "Sometimes it's the smallest gestures, like these shared dinners, that make the biggest impact. These are the moments they'll remember most." The server's words struck Mr. Hastings unexpectedly, like a sudden, profound realization. He had meticulously arranged this dinner, thinking it would be enough simply to meet Leo and let him experience the superficial grandeur of his lifestyle. But here, a complete stranger was subtly reminding him that relationships, especially those with family, required far more than just fine dining and polished gestures. They required heart, genuine attention, and true, unfeigned connection. Mr. Hastings glanced at Leo, who was now speaking animatedly with the couple at the next table. The woman was sharing a funny story about her own son's first day at school, and Leo was laughing, his eyes bright and his posture visibly relaxed. The laughter, the camaraderie, the natural warmth, these were things Mr. Hastings had not previously considered important. But watching his grandson, he slowly began to see that these were the things that truly mattered most to the boy. For the remainder of the evening, the couple continued to generously include Leo in their light-hearted conversation. They asked him about his interests, what he liked to do, and listened with genuine interest as he talked about his favorite books and his vivid sketches of imaginary places he hoped to visit one day. Their laughter and warmth effectively filled the vast gaps that his grandfather's reserved silence had left, and Leo's nervousness gradually gave way to a profound happiness that felt rare and incredibly precious. At one point, the woman looked at Leo and said, "You have a bright spirit, Leo. I can see it in the way you smile, the way you talk. Don't ever let go of that light, okay?" Leo nodded, feeling his heart swell with profound gratitude. Her words were a gentle, powerful reminder that he possessed something truly special within him, something that no amount of wealth or luxury could ever buy. Mr. Hastings, observing all of this, found himself utterly unable to ignore the significant impact these strangers had on his grandson. He realized that their kindness, simple and profoundly sincere, had achieved something he hadn't managed all evening. It had effectively brought Leo out of his shell and made him feel truly seen and valued. Watching Leo's unbridled joy, Mr. Hastings felt an unfamiliar twinge of deep regret. In his relentless quest for success, he had significantly distanced himself from the very things that brought genuine human connection. He began to fundamentally question the values he had built his entire life upon. Values centered predominantly on status and material wealth rather than on family and unconditional love. As the dinner neared its end, the woman leaned over to Mr. Hastings, offering him a kind but pointed smile. "You have a wonderful grandson," she said softly, her words laced with a gentle hint of encouragement. "He's a boy with a big heart. Don't let these moments slip by. They mean more than you might think." Mr. Hastings gave a small nod, her words sinking deeply into his consciousness as he watched Leo finish his meal with a content smile. The strangers had touched something profound in him, a powerful reminder that perhaps it wasn't too late to build a meaningful bridge with his grandson. The server's earlier comment echoed distinctly in his mind. These are the moments they'll remember most. A powerful wave of realization washed over him. For years, he had almost exclusively placed his worth in his achievements and accumulated wealth, viewing relationships solely through the lens of transactions and perceived value. But sitting here, watching his grandson interact so joyfully and openly with complete strangers, Mr. Hastings felt his heart undeniably soften. Perhaps this young boy was teaching him something he hadn't been willing to learn before, that family, love, and the simple act of simply being present were the greatest riches one could truly possess. He cleared his throat, breaking the momentary silence between them. "Leo," he began, his voice noticeably warmer than it had been all evening. "I'd like to hear more about those places you draw. Maybe we can see them together one day." Leo looked up, surprise lighting his face. For the very first time that night, he saw a profound softness in his grandfather's eyes, a genuine gentleness that had been carefully hidden beneath layers of formality and deep reserve. It was an offer, a glimmer of true connection, and Leo's heart swelled with fervent hope. "I'd like that," Leo replied, his voice barely more than a whisper but utterly filled with profound gratitude. As they left the restaurant that night, Leo felt a newfound warmth begin to grow between himself and his grandfather, Mr. Hastings. With the quiet wisdom he had gained from simply observing the stranger's unexpected kindness, walked with Leo by his side, feeling as though he had taken the essential first steps toward a genuine, lasting bond. Unknowingly, the kindness of strangers had become the spark that opened a brand new chapter in their relationship, revealing that true wealth was measured not by mere riches but by the love and cherished memories one left behind. As the dinner conversation continued, the warmth and steady encouragement from the nearby strangers began to profoundly open Leo up in ways he hadn't anticipated. He felt remarkably more comfortable, his usual shyness visibly replaced by a newfound confidence sparked directly by their kindness. The couple listened intently, their smiles genuine and their interest undeniably real, and for the very first time Leo felt as if he had people who truly saw him. The man across the table, whom Leo learned was named Mr. Jacobson, asked him gently, "So, Leo, what's your story? You seem like a young man with a lot to share." Leo hesitated, his gaze shifting to Mr. Hastings, who nodded encouragingly, surprising him. Taking a deep breath, Leo began to speak, his voice quiet at first but growing noticeably stronger as he went on. "I grew up in a small orphanage just outside the city," Leo said, glancing down at his hands as he spoke. "It was nice enough, the caretakers were kind, and I had friends there, but I always wondered what it would be like to have a real family, someone who would be there for me no matter what." The couple listened with profound compassion, and Mr. Hastings found himself utterly unable to look away. It was as if, for the very first time, he was truly seeing Leo not as a distant relative or an obligation, but as a real boy who had endured more loneliness than any child ever should. Leo continued, encouraged by their gentle expressions. "Sometimes I'd imagine that someone would come for me, that I'd wake up one day and I'd have a family waiting for me, a place where I really belonged." His voice cracked slightly, and he gave a small awkward laugh to cover it. "I guess that sounds silly," but Mrs. Jacobson shook her head firmly, her own eyes glistening. "No, Leo, it doesn't sound silly at all. Wanting a family, a place to belong, is something everyone deserves." At her heartfelt words, Mr. Hastings felt a powerful wave of realization wash over him. The superficial distance he had deliberately held from Leo, the misguided idea that simply providing a dinner in a fancy restaurant could bridge their significant gap, felt painfully shallow in this moment. He had genuinely thought that showing Leo the luxury he lived in could somehow create a meaningful connection, but he was now realizing how profoundly misguided that notion had been. For years, he had carelessly neglected his grandson, allowing the boy to grow up in deep loneliness, entirely unaware of his family legacy, because he had foolishly convinced himself that they lived in fundamentally different worlds. Yet, sitting here intently listening to Leo's quiet, heartfelt longing, Mr. Hastings saw his own stark shortcomings mirrored back at him. Leo looked down at his hands, his face flushed with emotion, and continued, "I used to draw pictures of families, places I imagined I could call home," he said, softly, almost to himself. "I'd draw a little house with a garden and people sitting together at dinner. I'd pretend I was there with them, even though it was just pretend." The room felt as though it held its breath, each word from Leo's mouth filling the space with a quiet, raw emotion that deeply touched everyone listening. Even the staff paused as they moved between tables, catching fragments of his poignant story. Mr. Hastings' heart ached. He felt a sharp pang of deep regret, thinking of all the empty years they could have potentially spent together. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything, to bridge the chasm he had so carelessly created, but no words immediately came to mind. So he simply listened, feeling as though his heart was breaking open for the very first time in years. Leo, sensing his grandfather's intense gaze, finally turned to him. "I don't know why you wanted to meet me now, Mr. Hastings," he said, his voice hesitant but steady, "but I'm glad you did, even if it's just for tonight." The profound simplicity of Leo's words struck Mr. Hastings deeply. The boy wasn't asking for wealth or grand promises. He only wanted to feel a part of something, to belong, if only for a fleeting moment. Mr. Hastings felt an overwhelming surge of shame for every time he had convinced himself that material success was enough, that wealth alone could substitute for real, genuine human connection. It was Mrs. Jacobson who, sensing the immense weight of the moment, gently touched Mr. Hastings' hand. "Family is precious," she said softly, her eyes filled with empathy, "and it's never too late to make things right. You still have the chance to be what he's dreamed of, a family, and that is worth far more than anything money could possibly buy." Her words lingered painfully, filling Mr. Hastings with a complex mix of regret and burgeoning resolve. He realized that he couldn't change the past years of absence, but he could definitively shape what came next. He had a crucial choice to make, and in that choice lay the entire future of his relationship with Leo. Gathering his courage, Mr. Hastings reached out, placing a tentative hand on Leo's shoulder. It was the very first genuine, affectionate gesture he had made all evening. Leo looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of profound surprise and vibrant hope. "Leo," Mr. Hastings began, his voice unsteady and thick with emotion. I'm sorry for not being there for you all these years, for not realizing how much you needed, how much we both needed this." He paused, swallowing hard against the emotion that threatened to completely choke him. "I don't expect you to understand my reasons, but I want to make things right. If you'll allow me, I'd like to be the family you've been waiting for." Leo's face softened, his expression a beautiful blend of disbelief and cautious optimism. "Really?" he whispered, barely daring to believe it. "Yes, really," Mr. Hastings replied, feeling a strange, comforting warmth spread through him as he spoke the profound words. "I can't change the past, Leo, but I'd like to be here for you, starting now, if you'll let me. That is." Leo's eyes immediately filled with tears, and he nodded, a radiant smile breaking through his emotions. "I'd like that very much, Grandpa." The room seemed to audibly exhale, and a powerful wave of relief and pure joy passed over the table. The Jacobsons exchanged knowing smiles, their hearts deeply touched by the remarkable transformation they had just witnessed. For them, this dinner was no longer just a meal, but a profoundly significant moment of human connection that had effectively broken down walls and brought two people together. In that instant, Mr. Hastings understood something he had missed his entire life, that wealth, titles, and social status were utterly insignificant compared to the simple joy of family, the comforting warmth of love, and the strength found in vulnerability. Leo, with his gentle spirit and profound longing for connection, had vividly reminded him of what he had truly been missing. As they left the restaurant that evening, Mr. Hastings held Leo's hand firmly, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He was unequivocally determined to be the grandfather Leo deserved, to create cherished memories and meaningful traditions, to finally become the family Leo had so desperately dreamed of. And Leo, for the very first time in his young life, felt the secure, comforting presence of family by his side. Together, they walked into the night, both profoundly changed by the unexpected kindness of strangers and the transformative power of a shared meal. After the dinner concluded, Roger and Leo stepped out of the restaurant into the cool night air. Roger felt a strange sense of profound peace mingled with an underlying urgency, as if he had just awakened from a long, deep slumber. The warmth he had experienced that evening had softened him in a way he hadn't thought possible. As he looked down at Leo's small hand clasped firmly in his own, he was struck by a powerful wave of gratitude and poignant regret. Pausing, Roger gently knelt down so that he was eye level with Leo, his gaze steady and filled with palpable emotion. "Leo," he began, his voice gentle but undeniably earnest, "I need to say something." Leo looked at him, his young face bright with a beautiful blend of hope and surprise. He had never seen his grandfather so vulnerable, so open. "I've made mistakes, and for that, I'm truly sorry. I spent too much time thinking that providing money or fancy things was enough," Roger continued, his voice thick with sincere emotion. "But tonight, you showed me what I've been missing. You've given me something far more valuable than any of that, a chance to be a real family." Leo's heart swelled, his eyes shining with both disbelief and immense gratitude. This was the moment he had longed for, and it was more beautiful than he had dared to even imagine. Roger continued, his own eyes misty with emotion. "If you'll let me, I'd like to be there for you from now on. I want to be the grandfather you deserve, not just someone who appears out of nowhere, but someone who's there with you every single step of the way." Leo could barely contain his immense joy, and without another single word, he threw his arms around Roger, embracing him with all the warmth he had kept bottled up for so long. Roger, in turn, wrapped his arms around Leo, holding him close and feeling a profound sense of belonging that transcended any material wealth he had accumulated over his lifetime. As they gently pulled back, Roger placed his hand firmly on Leo's shoulder, his gaze filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "Let's build some memories together, Leo," he said with a gentle smile. "Just you and me. We'll do things that truly matter, not just for us, but for others too. From that pivotal moment on, Roger and Leo embarked on a remarkable journey to become not just family by blood, but truly family by heart. Roger took Leo on exciting trips to places he had only ever read about in books. They went fishing at the serene lake, hiked exhilaratingly in the majestic mountains, and on rainy days they happily stayed indoors, playing chess or simply talking about life. They filled their days with infectious laughter, small, cherished traditions, and countless unforgettable memories, the kind that Leo had dreamed of his entire life. But their connection didn't stop there. Inspired by Leo's inherent openness and deep compassion, Roger suggested that they could do something meaningful to help other children, who were just like Leo had been, alone and profoundly wishing for love. Together, they began actively volunteering at local orphanages, donating not just their money but their invaluable time and boundless energy. They read captivating stories to the kids, played lively games with them, and listened intently to their hopes and heartfelt dreams. Through these consistent acts of kindness, Leo and Roger's bond deepened immeasurably, and Roger found a new, profound joy in life, a purpose far beyond himself. With Leo constantly by his side, he began to understand that love and selfless generosity, not money or social status, were the true measures of a truly fulfilling life. Roger's once empty heart now overflowed with gratitude and immense pride for his grandson, and he cherished every single moment they spent together. Years passed, and as Leo grew older, the unbreakable bond he shared with his grandfather only grew stronger and deeper. Roger watched with immense pride as Leo